So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenter today. David Trask is the National Director at ARC Facilities. David is a keynote speaker and a thought leader in the facilities management industry, specializing in leveraging innovative technology for facilities teams in various organizations. He has presented at numerous conferences and events, serves on the IFMA World Workplace 2023 Education Program Committee, and is an advisory board member for Facilithon. David emphasizes the importance of comprehensive succession planning to minimize the impact of facility team retirements. And we're so happy to have you speaking today, David. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
No, thank you so much, Indira, and thank you everybody for joining. You know, as Indira mentioned, what we're really going to focus in today on is some of the things that I've heard around the country over the last few years with regards to efficiency and response times. And what are some of those things that are really impacting facilities teams? And it really, at the end of the day, it comes down to, in facilities, it's a moving target. Your buildings are constantly changing. Renovations are happening. You're swapping out equipment. You do internal renovations, or you outsource those renovations to your GC or your contractors. But again, it's a moving target. But also, with coming out of COVID, it's also working with the adjusted schedules that are happening and these flex schedules that are happening with the staff that's coming back to work. So we're really going to focus in on kind of that moving target today and share some best practices of what we're hearing. But again, it is a moving target. So, but what that means is every renovation that happens in your building is represented by something like this. So every time you do a renovation, and I show this picture only to show this, it's every one of those rolls represents a change to your building. Well, it may not be a roll of paper, it may be a digital file, it may be a Revit model, maybe something associated with whatever that change to your building was. But usually what happens also is you're not just changing walls or you're not moving stuff around, you're moving equipment. You're moving shutoffs. So again, it's not just about walls moving, it's also the stuff between the walls. It's also the equipment that serves those particular rooms and the shutoffs that serve those particular spaces in your buildings. But that's a moving target for teams. Well, the expectation in many cases is the teams are just supposed to remember where this stuff is. The more buildings you have, the less likely that's possible. It's impossible for these teams to remember where everything is. And most orgs are really relying on what's in people's heads. Well, the challenge is, again, that's that expectation that Bob's going to be with me forever. Well, you know, that's not the case, especially in today's market. But do you know where all your equipment's located? So you just renovated a bunch of buildings, or you renovated some space in your building. Do you know what moved? Do you know what changed? Well, now that Bob's not there anymore, what about John or Betty, the next person on your team? Well, again, how are you supposed to maintain the building when it is that moving target and things are moving? One of the clients that I've got has about 120 projects going on right now, active construction projects. Now, they're not all going to finish this year, but that means potentially they have 120 different projects that could finish this year, which means imagine how many pieces of equipment and shutoffs and walls are going to move in that time frame. Get your head around that. You know, they've got roughly 60 buildings. That's stuff moving all over the place. But again, that's the challenge, is knowing where stuff is located. Well, you guys have stuff all over the place, but how accurate is your equipment database? So next person up, where do they go to find where AHU 10 is, AHU 9, or what exhaust fans serve what room, or what part of the building, or what shutoffs, what ceiling tile do I pop? You guys have stuff all over the place, but how accurate is that, and how are you maintaining that moving forward? Okay, this is what I traditionally see, is a database like this out of a work order system or some kind of an asset management system with a bunch of holes. But more importantly, a lot of the equipment that's in this list is obsolete. It's no longer in service, okay? Or there's a bunch of missing stuff. part of what my team's been doing over the last few years is going out and field verifying equipment lists and really seeing what's out there. And what we're seeing is roughly 30–40% of these equipment lists are just not valid. Okay, so think about what it would look like if it were like this. So a validated, field verified list. Now, again, all the equipment is here. All of the serial numbers are captured, but also you can even put end of life dates in here. And, you know, if equipment is, you think the end of life date is January of 2027. Okay, you can put that in there and then sort and see all those pieces of equipment that are by that end of life date. But again, that helps you with master planning. Okay, it gives you a better snapshot. But if your list is 30–40% out of date, how are you supposed to plan for the future? How are you supposed to plan for those failures? So here's what it looks like. Again, all over the place. Equipment's on a roof, it's in a mechanical room, it's in a data closet someplace. All right, it's all over the place. But your team's also going up on the roof. I actually was talking to a client, when I say going up on the roof, they're going up on a roof trying to find stuff. They're on a ladder or they're popping ceiling tiles trying to find stuff. I was actually on site at a school district about 3 weeks ago. And, you know, they thought that they had roughly 40 pieces of equipment on the roof of a high school, about 40 pieces. Okay. Not knowing, now again, new facilities folks, not knowing that are on the team now, not knowing because they're not up on the roofs at that school, not knowing that school had been renovated and major retrofits had been done. Okay. We got to that school and there were roughly 300 units on the roof. Think about that. Every single classroom now had a split system and the condensers were on the roof. Think about that. Not knowing what's there. So how are you supposed to maintain and service that if you don't even know what's there? So these guys are climbing up on the roof, trying to figure out which of the hundreds of units that are on the roof service room 10. Okay, they can ballpark by knowing, okay, I'm standing here. I think number 10 is right below me, but think about that. They're going up ladders or popping roof hatches. Okay, or they're also popping ceiling tiles like that photo in the middle at the bottom there and trying to figure out where stuff is. They're shining their flashlight up there, trying to figure out, oh, I've got to go 4 tiles over. Come on. You know, it's 2023. It's not 1990. You can access this stuff easily, and I'll show you what that can look like. But the other challenge is you've probably got a lot of stuff that looks like this. Okay. Again, this is not pointing any fingers at anybody. Everybody's got this kind of stuff that's running on its last legs. Okay, it's held together by duct tape. All right, and it's all over the place. Some of this stuff may be out there, it's just decommissioned. Okay, but where is it? One of the schools that I talked to had told me that he ballparks about 20% of his equipment that's in the field is decommissioned. How many of your pieces are decommissioned? They just didn't get ripped out. Okay, hospitals, obviously with regulatory challenges that are out there, you've got to keep everything up to date and running as best you can. But because a lot of folks are running short-staffed, you just don't have the people to go and maintain a lot of equipment, or budget cuts also can impact that. But that doesn't stop, again, if this machine fails, whatever this device fails, okay, you still have to serve that particular space that or maintain the air quality for that space that this particular unit serves. Okay, but your team's also running around all over the place. All right, all weather conditions are up on lifts, they're on ladders, they're, you know, all over the place, no matter what the weather conditions are. But they're always on the move. So they also are, you're going to have a handful of folks that know where everything is. And remember what I said, those people on the team that remember where stuff is are typically the people who have been there for a long time. Well, what about the new person? Right? What about the changes that have happened over the last year? It's impossible for these people to remember where everything is. And stuff's hidden all over the place. But what about the person who started last week? Can they access where all that stuff is? Do they know where everything is? So your most tenured person is on vacation. All right. Do they know? Does the new person know without calling that person? Do they know where everything's located? What we're seeing is between 6 months and 18 months is a ramp up time for new hires. I just heard this on a call I was on yesterday. He said, you know, if you've been in one building, you've been in one building. You hire an electrician, okay, or you throw bodies at a problem of knowing where stuff is or replacing people. Those are just more people that don't know your building. Why is that? Again, it's 2023. Why doesn't the new person have access to where all your stuff is? And when I say access, I mean current conditions, where your stuff is located in the buildings. And I'm not talking just in the buildings, outside the buildings too, in between the buildings. You know, and we'll talk about that. But here's what most folks end up doing. Everybody's got a Carl, Bob, Betty, whoever that person is that's been there for a long time that just knows where everything is. The person's phone's ringing off the hook, the radio's going off. Hey, do you know where X is? And again, it's like a fire drill if he's not there. Well, why is that? But Carl knows where every AHU is located. He knows what rooms that thing services. Carl also knows where every shutoff is, or the majority of them. Okay, I often hear that it's not just impossible for Carl to remember where everything is. He's probably forgot more of where these things are than he'll ever remember or can pass on. So what happens is Carl's the guy that put those blue dots and those yellow dots on your ceiling grid, but didn't label what was up there. Okay, and I walk down hallways with folks all the time and I ask them, what's that blue dot? Well, I don't know. Well, who put that dot up there? Carl did. Who's Carl? Oh, Carl retired 4 years before I started. So you've never popped that tile? No, we've never had an incident. So if something happens tomorrow, you're going to be digging all over the place. You're going to be popping this tile, popping that tile. But you don't know, even if I go up there and pop that tile, that that's going to be the water shutoff for this side of the building. No, I don't know that. So what do? I go to the main. Think about that. You've got isolation valves all over the place, gas, water, power. You got panels all over the place. Why isn't that stuff all documented so you know where everything is and not just having to call Carl? Well, remember what I said, your buildings are changing. Now, remember those rolls of drawings that I showed? All of these, Carl was there. Okay, Carl's been there for 30 years. So keep in mind, your building's 50 years old. So Carl's only been there for the last 30. So even he doesn't have access to that historical change record of everything that's happened in your building. But that's what you do. You call Carl. Well, again, what do you do when Carl walks into your office tomorrow, sits down in the chair in front of you and says, I'm tired. I'm retiring at the end of the year. Okay, I just talked to a guy again yesterday, same guy, said, I had 60% of my team is scheduled to retire in the next year and a half. Okay, but what that represented was 80 years of institutional knowledge. He's got a lot of Carls. Okay, what do you do and what's your plan to get that stuff out of that guy's head before he walks out the door? And think about it as a compounded problem. Okay, Carl gives his notice. Even if he gives you 3 months notice, 6 months notice, what's your hiring time frame? We all know in the labor market today, it's a challenge. So roughly 30% of facilities workers are scheduled to retire. These are the guys and gals that know where everything is in your buildings. All right. How many of your team is in that window? But it's not just about the retirements. It's also that lack or that loss of that institutional knowledge. All right. What's your plan to transition that from these guys to the next generation that's coming in? Think about that. But it's now also snowballed by the current labor market. We're losing people that are just getting higher paying jobs up the street. People that have been on your team for 5 years, 10 years. Think about all the stuff they know and all the stuff you're relying on them to be able to handle when something goes sideways in your building. So again, it's not just the people who've been with you for a long time. It's also the people who've been there 5, 10 years that just know where stuff is too. So what that means is now a lot of teams are running because I can't find people in the current labor market. I'm fighting to get the same people as everybody else in my market. I'm doing more with less. I've heard Positions have been open for a year, trying to find an electrician, a plumber, or an HVAC tech, right? I've also heard that people are leaving and getting jobs up the street, making $8-10 more an hour. That's where we are today. So now teams are doing more with less because they're down 20% staff. They're down 30%. I heard 40. That's the highest number I've heard to date. How do you manage that? But what that means is these are the people who know where everything is. So that picture in the bottom right-hand corner is a hospital. That happened in 45 minutes because the guy who knew where the mains, or I'm sorry, where the isolation valves were for that floor was on PTO. He was on a cruise ship and his cell phone didn't work. Single point of failure. One guy knew where everything was. Think about that. One person knew where everything was, knew where all those isolation valves were, and they couldn't get a hold of him. So that happened in 45 minutes. That's a mess. All right. But now what's also happening is because we're running with these current labor shortages, what we're also hearing is that a lot of what we usually do in preventative maintenance is now getting shoved into that deferred category. And I've heard from multiple people that says, you know, if we shove it into deferred, it just means it's not going to get done. We're not going to replace it. We're not going to maintain it. So what they're doing is run to fail. That's not a good business strategy, folks. If you're run to fail, that means that thing could fail at any time. And now you're on the hook to try and either rent something to replace it if that's possible, or you've got to try to find a new unit to replace it. And right now, trying to find stuff in the current market, it's tough. I've heard backup generators, trying to find a backup generator or get it installed is 18 months. Chillers are about the same. Trying to track down replacement units. So when that thing fails, now what? You can't get it. It's a challenge. So how do we bridge that gap between the old and the new? Well, it starts by getting rid of all this garbage. Remember, all of these changes, all the changes to your building are represented in something that looks similar to this, all those drawings, all that stuff, or it's something like this or a combination thereof, right? But just because I scan stuff in and dump it on a share drive doesn't mean I can find it any better and I can find it by trying to dig through all these rolls, right? But that's the first part, okay? But what good is this if I can't find anything anyway? So just scanning stuff, dumping it on a share drive doesn't do you any good if you can't find it. And then rarely do I hear that O&Ms are digital, so any of the binders. But you got to start documenting where this stuff is now. If you notice these photos, every one of these people is either you're holding either an iPad or they're holding a phone, okay? Every person on your team has a smartphone, all of them, right? Can they access the information to do their job when they're on the roof by pulling their phone out of their pocket or grabbing their iPad off their cart and seeing what they need to do their job? Electrical drawings, seeing where's my equipment located. Before they even go out there to fix something, they know what filters to grab. They know what belts to grab, right? But they can also see a video of that person that fixed it last time saying, you know, this thing's a pain in the behind to fix. You got to use this particular wrench. You got to pop it, but it snags over here, whatever. That's institutional knowledge you're capturing that everybody on your team can now see, right? You can do this today. There are things that you can do that will help that. But imagine having all of your equipment, all of it. Pull your phone out of your pocket. You see a map of a floor, pick a floor, you see a map where all the equipment's located, tap on it, and you pull up an equipment record that shows all of that. All of it. Photos, videos, manuals, all the stuff, specs, all the stuff, wiring diagrams, all of that stuff is now tied to the equipment and mapped out. So every person, so remember what I said, what about the new person? Okay, that new person starts tomorrow and has access to this tomorrow, not a month from now, not 6 months, 18 months of training for them just to figure out where stuff is. Tomorrow they have access. Think about how much that's going to speed up your training with that person. Think about that. And think about all the new hires that you're going to have to hire to replace those folks who are leaving, whether they're retiring or whether they're leaving for another position. Think about that. So let's talk about what that would look like. So instant access to information in the field. And I'm showing you what it would look like in an iPad, but just visualize this. So I want to see the drawings for the building, right? I literally pull my phone out of my pocket, tap on an app, pick the building, and this is just a demo, but pick a building, okay? Click an as-built map view. And what this shows is all the historical changes that have happened on a building, and it even shows where on each floor those changes occurred. Think about that. I'm not having to roll out all those different roles trying to figure out what was where. I don't have to call Carl and say, oh, well, that was the 2018 renovation. Oh, no, what? It wasn't that one. It was the 1985. Everybody can see all the historical changes floor to floor just by opening up their phone, tapping an app. Couple of clicks and they're there. Okay, not looking through hundreds of rolls of drawings. It's instant and they got access to it. Well, let's think about it from the standpoint of I want to get information on equipment. So again, same thing, pull my phone out of my pocket, walk up to a unit, scan a QR code, and pull up all the information about that unit. Remember what I said, videos, photos, but also all the additional stuff, my manual, all right? Having links back to my work order system, having links back to the website for Grainger where I order parts. All of it, when I walk up to the device, scan it. Well, your vendors can also have access to that. You outsource HVAC, you outsource something else. They can walk up to it, scan that QR code, and see all the information about that equipment, all in one spot. Same thing with shutoffs. Remember that whole conversation that I said or mentioned earlier about the guy who's on the cruise ship? Okay, again, click on an app, click on the building, click on a floor, okay, shutoffs, there you go. Here's all the shutoffs on this floor. Click on or outside the building as well, and you're going to see a backflow here. Tap on an icon that's a water icon. Here's the backflow. Okay, you can put information, shuts off the southeast corner of the building, or it shuts off these two buildings. All of that critical information so your team can respond faster. So these are some of the best practices for getting started and really looking at this. And this requires a hard look in the mirror. What are you doing today? You got to think about it from the standpoint of your new hires have access on the first day. Day one, you give them access, they can see everything for your building. So you go from months and months and months or a year plus of training to weeks. They have everything in their hands day one, okay? And you show them how to access that information quickly. Instant access, instant, no matter where I am. I'm on a roof, okay? I'm in a basement, I have offline access as well, wherever the heck I'm at, all right? I'm in a computer, I'm in again, on my iPad, or I'm on my phone, wherever I'm at, I can access that information. But now they can focus on their core competency. You hire an electrician to do their job. Okay, you hire a plumber, they can do their job. They're not spending all that time just trying to find stuff to do their job. Think about technology is not scary, okay? Everybody on your team has done Zoom this year, okay? Everybody on your team has a smartphone in their hands, in their pockets. They all do. It's not like it was 10 years ago, folks. Everybody uses QR codes. Everybody uses OCR to search documents, okay? But imagine being able to even search your large format drawings. Do a search, okay? You can do that today. But the most important thing on this page is take custody of your building information. Get it out of those people's heads, get it out of that plan room, and now everything lives with the building, not with just a person. Everything, all in one spot. But be proactive, get organized, proactively start capturing that information before it walks out the door. Every day that you wait is a day closer to their last day. Think about that. Every day you wait is a day closer to their last day. So what are you waiting for, right? You know it's coming. People on your team are in that window of 2 to 5 years. You need to start today capturing that information. Get rid of all that paper, okay? Digitize all your information and make sure it's organized so everybody can find stuff. Store it all in one spot, all right? All the drawings for your buildings, all your manuals for the buildings, but also mapping out where that stuff is located all in one spot. If it's not easy, your team will not use it. Let me repeat that. If it's not easy, your team won't use it. What I just showed you in those little clips, those little animations, that's how fast your team can access it. A couple of seconds. So think about how much time they're spending looking for stuff now. All right. On average, teams are spending between an hour and 3 hours per day looking for stuff to do their jobs. I'm not talking about just flipping through paper, folks. I'm talking about I just climbed off a ladder. I had to go back to the plan room. I had to go to a different building. I had to run around in my golf cart. I had to jump in the car, whatever. They're spending time running back and forth, back and forth. But now they've got access to it right here. All of it right here. Wherever the heck they are, they can access it. Middle of the night, they get a phone call, they roll over out of bed, grab their phone, they can access that information and tell security who's still on site at 2 a.m. where it is, or the first responder where something is, before they even put their shoes on. Okay, that's what we're talking about here is instant access, but you got to start now. You know, what are you waiting for? Okay, remember, every day that you wait, every minute that you wait is 1 minute or 1 day closer or 1 week closer to that person's last day. So pass forward is, again, take custody of your information. Again, it's a perfect storm here. It's a combination of the retiring folks, can't find people. I'm losing folks to other orgs up the street. Okay, but you have to plan strategically and think about the right technologies that can solve and fill gaps in what you're doing today. Fill those gaps, all right? It's not rocket science here, but it's your move forward plan, okay? So let's open it up for some questions here.
All right, thank you, David. Let's just go ahead and dive right in. The first question I have is, how long does it typically take to map? Well, it's a two-part question. How long does it take to typically map out all of the equipment? And what if I don't even have an equipment list?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to how we do it. Essentially, we're inside of about 90 days. Obviously, it depends on the size of your campus, but traditionally, we're inside of 90 days from start to finish. That includes all the drawings getting digitized, all organized. That means also mapping out equipment, shutoffs, also emergency equipment. We map out all that stuff. Traditionally, we're on site inside of 2 to 3 weeks and mapping that out. If you don't have an equipment list, we create one. We add all those fields that I just mentioned. We'll capture make, model, serial number, location, what room's it in, what building's it in, all of that. And you can export that out and import that into whatever system you're using for your work orders now. But at the end of the day, all of it's in one spot and everybody can access that information.
Okay. Next question I have here. How do you enter the as-built? Does your customer take them somewhere to have them scanned in?
No, no, you basically, essentially with our system, you point and say it's everything in that room. We dedupe it, we get rid of all the duplicates, and you're gonna have duplicates. We see it all the time. But our team picks it all up, organizes it, and it's delivered right here on a phone. It's delivered in an app. You can access it from any browser as well. Very simple, it's turnkey. Your team doesn't have a heavy lift at all. You don't need to go through it and organize it. You know, if it's a whole campus or it's one building, you just say, there's the drawings, we pick it up and it's done. And again, everything within that 90 days. Okay.
We've been trying to fill open positions for over a year. How are the customers you're working with tackling that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of questions or a couple of answers I can give to that. There's also the challenges where you may or may not have some union influence as well. The companies who I found that are successful in luring people in are the organized and truly organized organizations, because keep in mind, a lot of the folks that you're hiring are coming from organizations that are a train wreck. That may be one of the reasons that they're leaving, is because, you know, it's really it's tedious. It's a pain in their behind trying to do their job. You're basically putting a tool in their hands by doing this so that they come in and now they can actually focus on their core job. They can go fix stuff, right? They're not wasting all that time trying to dig. Now, what I mentioned with the union influence, a lot of the companies that I've talked to, schools and municipalities and things like that have union influence or their union shops, they've actually worked with the local unions to actually create different job categories for the people who are transitioning into retirement. And one that I talked to up in New York actually said that they worked with their union representation or the union representation to create a complete separate job category where they actually, the people who are in that retirement window were able to work about 28 hours. I think it was 25 to 28 hours a week. Okay, they actually increased their hourly rate significantly, but they could do it in 4-month increments. Okay, so they can renew it up to 4 times. So think about that. They can potentially keep that new person working part-time up to 16 months. What they're doing is leveraging that 16 months potentially to transition that institutional knowledge over to the new person. But they're using technology like I showed you to do that. So they're basically putting a tool in this guy who's about to retire in his hands to capture that stuff, but then also train up the new people coming in.
All right, thank you, David. Next question. If there are no historical as-built prints, do you just add the new prints? Does your firm come in and literally check all the ceilings and closets?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
If there are no historical as-built prints,
Mhm.
do you just add the new prints? Does your firm come in and literally check all the ceilings and closets?
Yeah, so, well, essentially, if you don't have anything, we have partners that we actually have going to scan the building. Okay, they can create a floor plan for you of current conditions, and then our team will go out there and field verify where the equipment is. We'll be popping ceiling tiles, going on the roofs, and capturing where all the shutoffs are as well. But the move forward plan also, we know we're going to miss some things, so we're going to train your team how to add stuff. So they're up on a ladder and they're working on a smoke detector, for instance. They popped a ceiling tile, turn their head around, there's a valve behind me. It's simple for them to literally pull their phone out of their pocket, take a picture of that, okay, and then identify that that's a water isolation valve. They don't even need to know what exactly it shuts off right then and there, but now they document that, and now they can come back later on. And now keep in mind, when I say document that, as soon as they hit save, everybody on the team now sees there's a valve there and a photo of it, okay? But now you can go back there and at least you've narrowed down, and you've also shared that there's something that you didn't know yesterday. It's right there. So this is evergreen. As your team finds stuff, as they move stuff, it's very simple for them to add and move stuff around.